Jim Sterling. You may have heard of Jim Sterling before. You may know him for his savvy political commentary, and if you know him for that, then you know exactly why a lot of people don't like him. You see, Jim Sterling has a bit of a reputation. Jim was someone who used to be adored by many people, made funny commentary, trashed on bad business practices, that sort of thing. But now, let's say they, have recently taken, not so much as a dive, but more like a fucking cannonball off a cliff. It could be partly due to the fact that Jim cannot help themselves putting fucking political commentary everywhere, you know what I mean? Trying to conflate a bad guy destroying things in Dark Souls or whatever to the US Republican Party being soft on climate change, because that makes a lot of sense. But that's not what we're talking about here today. You see, I was looking through some Metro Exodus content. I'm a big Metro fan, and I was recommended this video by Jim Sterling, in which Jim does not enjoy Metro Exodus, and I wanted to find out why. And when I started watching it, well, you can probably guess what my reaction was, but we are not going to get ahead of ourselves here. We're gonna react to this video, and we'll see how it goes. Skipping past the usual intro that a lot of people like to do with all the music and shit like that, or where they're explaining the backstory of how they enjoy a franchise or whatnot, we will start here with this first point.
I've not had a single moment of fun here, and the rest of my time has been spent working out why that is. I think part of it, a big part of it in fact, has to do with the environment.
Already a big red flag here. In fact, so many big red flags for someone who's played Metro Exodus that you'd think we're currently located in the Soviet Union. You see, when Jim Sterling talks about the environment, I would like to know which one, because Metro Exodus is a very diverse game when it comes to environments. I know what he means, he is going to get into it later, but, you see, very few areas are like the previous in the game. Some are open, some are tight, some are complex, and others are relatively simple and straightforward in what they expect you to do and how they expect you to traverse them. But I am one of life's givers and one of life's greatest receivers, so I will let Jim Sterling finish his point here. Let's see. What does he have to say about the environment? What is it about the environment that he doesn't like?
Now, there are interior, undergroundy tunnels, dungeon-type areas, I'll just call them now for the sake of brevity, and in those moments, Metro Exodus feels a lot more like the original Metro, but all throughout the game, its overall map design doesn't feel as tight and claustrophobic as the original Metro.
What in the sorry son of a fuck did I just listen to? For those of you that don't know, the original Metro, that being Metro 2033, is a game that primarily takes place in the underground. It makes sense. Your character was born in a Metro, has lived all their time in the Metro, and most of their business is located in the Metro. But I got some red flags here, because, you see, one of the main problems with Metro 2033, and anyone who has played Metro 2033 and tried to do things in a way that isn't just shooting everything will be able to tell you, in some areas, the game is a bit of a clusterfuck design-wise. Some things feel way too tight, unrealistically so, to the point where it is no exaggeration to compare it to the hallway of your house expanded by a few centimeters. The result of that is that players who want to stealth around and not be seen all the time have virtually no freedom in what they can or can't do. Last Light and Exodus fixed this by expanding the space you had in many areas. Now, the thing about Exodus, you can walk around these big open worlds, and they are intimidating in their own right and in their own sense. You can be caught in a gigantic sand cloud and have the ghoulish creatures from the desert all run up and attack you, and you aren't able to see them until they're right on top of you. Or you can get caught in a big rainstorm to take advantage of that because a lot of the Watchers, that being some of the mutants in the game, do not like being outside when those storms are active, so they will hide and thus being much easier to maneuver around them. I can't say these examples will feel claustrophobic for anyone, but they did for me, and even if they aren't claustrophobic, they're still intimidating, they're still difficult challenges in their own right, and they are still something else other than wandering around through the same tunnels, copy-pasted over and over again, with a few differences. What this freedom does is it effectively allows you to tackle things from any direction or any which way you want. You are not always out the outside, thank God for that. But to say that these environments are a problem because they don't feel too tight, a majority of the time is very, very ridiculous.
Which would be fine if the gameplay, if the way the character controls, moves, and shoots had been sped up a bit.
What?
Instead, I felt the whole game, or at least my whole time playing the game, I felt like I was moving too slow, like I was aiming too slow. Even when I whacked the sensitivity up, everything still felt sluggish and nowhere near as responsive as I wanted it to.
Did we play the same game? Alright, let me explain this. I don't know what you're talking about in reference to how quickly your character walks. Honestly, that's how it's been in every Metro game, except here the wait is a bit more noticeable due to the distances you occasionally have to travel, very rarely by the way. Unless you're an idiot and don't notice the car parked right outside. Parked right next to your spot in the desert. That would be stupid. But the aiming part! What in the fuck are you talking about? This is always how it has been. You are only noticing this now because, or at least ever since last light, but you are only noticing this now because you now have to aim somewhere else other than forwards or slightly left and right or slightly up or down. And the thing about this is that for someone who claims to have played 2033 and Last Light, there are many, many parts in those games where you have to turn around quickly and aim at a distance and things like that in non-tight areas. Such as when the demon, that being a big flying mutant monster thing in Last Light, flies above you and you have to shoot it down before it actually grabs you. Or when the exact same thing is in fact the situation in Metro 2033, and yet this is suddenly a problem for Exodus, but not for those games, not that I know of that you mention at least. The Metro series has always had slower movement and weighted guns. So the fact that you think that this is a problem here is very revealing, honestly speaking. It is very revealing. Oh, and may I point out that he's making it sound as if this is some very poorly programmed game where the controls are just sluggish and very heavy and not very responsive. No, they are very responsive. In fact, more responsive than 2033, I'd argue. And when it comes to consistent standards, he's about as straight as a homosexual.
And it's functionally not all that different from the original Metro, except in that game, with very tight corridors and a very distinct pacing, it worked. It was part of to be methodical.
And there you go. The game expects you to aim somewhere else other than forwards, therefore it's a problem here and not there. What is this? What am I listening to? Also, I love how he's talking about being methodical in the original games, particularly Metro 2033, where you had about zero room to maneuver, and not applying that very same standard to a game that lets you tackle things however the fuck you want, from whatever position you want. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Whereas this, even though a lot of that's still true, it takes way longer to get to places. You see enemies from further away, therefore the firefights often end up more distanced.
I'm just gonna start skipping parts where I will end up repeating myself, but basically, I would like to point out that distance, distance in a semi-open world game, really, distance, are you fucking, god fucking damn it, my god, and the firefights, right. The firefights only end up being at a distance most of the time if you don't try to sneak around. And someone who has played the Metro games before and known that the game's decisions are in your playstyle, such as endings changing based on how you played, a lot of the firefights will end up being close range anyway a lot of the time. Because to get past some areas, you will be sneaking around a lot of the time, or get into these massive gunfights or whatever with these enemies. So unless you're not, as you put it, methodical in how you approach things, it's only natural that some gunfights will be more at a distance, but a majority of them still are relatively up close. But what do I know? I actually played the Metro games and know that getting into gunfights willy-nilly and just approaching places without thinking for half a second is not a very good idea. He goes on to talk about a little bit about how it's just him, how he found himself not enjoying some of these areas. And you know what? If you find yourself getting bored at something, that's subjective, and I can't disprove you on that. If you don't like something, you don't like it. End of story. I just find it unfair how you are criticizing this game for something the other games did, but this time with more freedom. But hey, at least he isn't gonna start talking about objectivity, is he? Right? Right?
Also, as gorgeous as it looks, Metro Exodus is visually, and from an audio perspective as well, incredibly cluttered. There's so much detail in absolutely everything. So much immaculately detailed rust and dirt and grime and brickwork and shit on the floor that everything blends into each other, including the enemies. And it's not just in terms of what I can see, it affects the gameplay as well, because every 2 feet you're getting caught on some twig or some bit of metal, just something you didn't see, that pins you in place. Trying to navigate a particularly littered area is an exercise in being really annoyed, actually.
Jim, you are playing Metro, not Fallout 3. He's talking about twigs and metal on the floor as if it stops you from moving. For one, no, it doesn't. Not unless you're walking into the bark of a tree or into a car or something like that. This is something that I have never fucking heard before as a complaint when it comes to this game. My eyesight is not that great, but I have never found myself wondering, hey, why can't I move forward here? Only to find that there was a bit of metal on the floor that was blocking me. No, that's just not something that has happened in this game to me. And I honestly don't know where he's bringing this up from. Where exactly? What part of the fucking game are you pointing to? What part of I'm legitimately curious to know what part of the game has areas where you are surprisingly blocked out of nowhere from walking because there's a bit on the floor, or you're getting caught in a twig or some shit like you put it. Also, not just about being difficult to see enemies, really, Jim, just about, you know, you have trouble seeing the enemies. Really. I think that says enough. I think that says enough about this game. If you can't see the enemies, I think that's a problem with you, buddy.
Same goes for the audio, where I think they've tried to be realistic by having characters speak over each other. But the end result is that characters speak over each other. They are just a nattering, and you can't work out which bit's important and which bits are not. This is also true of background sounds. Lavishly, luxuriously implemented background sounds. So much going on, to the detriment of the important stuff that you're actually meant to be paying attention to.
I'm gonna take a wild guess here and say he stopped playing in this video around somewhere in the middle of the desert map, because he is currently using footage of the second area in the game. I'm guessing what he's referring to here, though, is the cultish temple. Basically, if you don't know, upon arriving in that area that you're seeing on screen, you go on a little boat raft and check out a settlement. It turns out to be a temple full of cultists. Now, if you wander around this area and you sneak around as they try to hunt you down, you can hear many people in conversation. However, he is treating it as if there are two characters next to each other talking over themselves, something like that, when in reality, no. You have some areas where you can hear someone else talking in the background, but it is going to be so dim that unless you have problems focusing your hearing, you are not going to have trouble understanding what the character that you are looking at or closest to is saying. The further away you are, the less sound there is. That's how sound fucking works, dude. And if there are two characters right next to each other, they will not be talking over each other, they will be having a conversation, and one of the passing by NPCs may leave a comment, or just say something random like, fuck, it must have been the wind, or some shit like that. But again, it will be far quieter than what the other people are saying. And in fact, if you simply play the game twice, you will notice that there is actually a trigger for when some characters will start to speak. If Jim has made it to the desert, he will know this, because some characters will flat out not begin a conversation, or you will not be able to hear it until you are close enough.
It reminds me of Red Dead Redemption 2, where Rockstar went overboard with the details, with the extraneous additions and animations as well. This is another game, Metro Exodus, another game,
I don't have anything in particular to respond to here, but you notice how there is a character yelling in the background, screaming, begging for mercy, whatever the fuck that guy is doing, I don't recall right now. But you see this mixing of voices that you're hearing now, even though you can still clearly point out that you're listening to Jim's voice and not whatever the hell that guy is saying. Situations like that do not really occur in this game. It's much dimmer than that. It's as if I turned the game volume down to 10%, or 2%, and started talking over it. And that's at worse.
And as I said of Red Dead Redemption 2, there is attention to detail, and there is obsession with detail. And Metro Exodus has trended towards the obsessive side.
What? You know what? You know what? I'm not even gonna talk about this, because my brain refuses to process this. Obsession with detail. There is a big world with a lot of things to do and a lot of ways to tackle the things that you can do in this world. What? What the fuck is this fucking point? Metro Exodus did not have 16 times the detail, it had 17 times the detail, and that was too much for me. Too many things to look at, too many things to take in, because apparently I can't focus on what I'm fucking... why am I even bothering? It's Jim, Stephanie, Sterling.
And do you know how much I loathe doing that? How much I despise saying I put on a Far Cry game and had way more fun with it than a Metro game? That's not right. That's not good. That's not something any human being should be in a position to do.
Jim, if some things ruin something for you, if some aspect of a game or whatnot ruins the enjoyment for you, that's perfectly fine. It is subjective. Some people enjoy some things, other people do not. However, you are making your subjective issues with the game seem objective when they are not. And this is another reason why people stopped caring about you, because not only did you become greatly inconsistent with your standards, but throughout this video, you have managed to turn your impatience into an objective issue with the game. And, you know, there's also the fact that you're turning things that have always been in Metro games, including the ones you refer to positively, into negatives in this game. I actually do wonder how you played Metro 2033 or Last Light if you are only noticing the fact that your character has weight now. But then again, you did try to pass it off as sluggish controls, when that's not at all what the case is for the game.
And I know that I'm going to be in the minority of humans who have found themselves obligated to do this. Because it is an obligation, and it is very important that I say it, and get myself harangued for it, and make myself a societal pariah for saying it. And I want you to appreciate the sacrifice I've made.
Jesus Christ, talk about being disingenuous. No, Jim, the Spanish Inquisition isn't going to show up at your front door just because you said you found yourself getting bored in some aspect of Metro Exodus. However, it does make you a pariah when you start to talk about things that have always existed in the Metro games and claim them to be an issue in this game just because this game allows you more freedom. And judging by the way you played this right now on your screen, I think I know why you didn't notice it in the other games, because the other games were very tight and very small in scale, and now that this game is bigger in scale, and because you don't, you know, take the time to, how'd you put it again, be methodical, that led you to not noticing it existing in the other games, when it most certainly did, and it was most certainly the case. Disingenuous fat fuck.
Which also has open environments, I mean a full-bore open world. But the moment I put it in, I was moving faster, I was aiming faster. Traversing the world was a lot more fluid and interesting, and I certainly wasn't getting stuck on shit all the time.
By this logic, Fallout 4 is more enjoyable than Metro Exodus because I can move faster in it. What the fuck are you talking about, Jim? Perhaps if you could come up with an example of where you got stuck in the game, I would be a little bit more believing of you, but considering that I have a habit of 100%ing Metro games, maybe it's just me, but I don't believe you when you say you're getting stuck on shit. At least not enough to the point where it's reasonable to complain about it. I think you're just coming up with things to justify why you don't like the game. If you could say, oh, I got bored of it, yeah, sure, whatever. But don't start coming up with random shit, some of which you praise other games for, to at least sound smart in your justification as to why you didn't like it. Yes, please, thank you.
I just think the environments were better designed, more intuitively designed. And it didn't help that I thought the exterior sections in the original Metro were the weakest parts. I know a lot of people enjoyed it, that sense of running out into that dangerous environment with a gas mask on. And there were some tense moments, but for the most of it, there was a lot more of that visual clutter. I don't like fighting the mutants at the best of times.
Keep in mind, he's talking about the original Metro here. And, when talking about the original Metro, you see, one of its weakest points was the very linear, very straightforward, very tight Metro areas. Also, he's complaining about fighting the mutants in the Metro games. In the whole series. What? There is such a large variety of the mutants. What? That's like the majority of the fighting you do in the games. What the fuck? No. Legitimately. Even if you do not stealth around in the original Metro games, you are going, that's 2033 and Last Light, you are going to find yourself fighting mutants far more often than you are going to find yourself fighting monsters. Which is one of the reasons that surprises me that you don't like this game as much. Because in Metro Exodus, a majority of the enemies that you end up fighting, except for, the enemies in large groups that show up in one spot, are humans in Metro Exodus. That's the point! It is literally the point of Metro Exodus to discover all of these new areas, and you are going to keep running into these different civilizations over and over and over again. How the fuck is this a point against Metro Exodus? And how the fuck can you say that? How the fuck can you keep comparing Metro Exodus to the old games when the primary source of conflict in the other games is the stuff that you don't like to fight? How the fuck is this?
I find them very annoying to fight. I find a lot of the mutated animals in the Metro series just a big pain in the arse. When you're trying to get from one location to another, be it on foot or by boat, being constantly harassed by little monsters, shitty little monsters all of the time, it's not enjoyable for me.
I don't take issue with you saying that it's not enjoyable for you to be harassed by monsters in the travel from one place to another. However, you are only harassed by the monsters in your travels if you let yourself be harassed by the monsters. You see, even if you don't sneak around, it's actually quite easy to go around them, because they are either stationary, or they go around on a specific pattern, like they're migrating from one part of the map to the other. I think what he's referring to here is the ghouls from the desert who will lie down until they hear something go by. And he's making it sound like it's constant. It's not. It's actually not. It's really not. You are not going to get constantly attacked by monsters just because you're going from one location to the other. If anything, using the desert as an example, the people who are going to be harassing you are humans. They will turn up on trucks and start attacking you and ambushing you. They will block off the road and prepare an ambush against you. And even in the second area of the game, the one with the cults, I forget the names now, you are only harassed if you are rushing to the next area like some sort of Acer Thorn or some shit. If you don't know who I'm referring to, I envy you. But if you are, taking your time and being methodical, and not even being methodical, if you're just not rushing to the fucking marker in a straight line, you are not going to get harassed by these things. At least not a majority of the time.
The writing, when you can hear dialogue over the sound of dialogue...
I know I'm repeating myself, but I'd just like to point out that he is, again, making it sound as if it's a constant thing when it most certainly is not. There are triggers to activate dialogue to make sure not everybody's speaking all over one another, and even when you're sneaking around, such as in the cultist temple, you are not going to hear everybody talking at the same time, because for one, it's just not how sound works, and second of all, it is a very rare thing in the game to have two characters speaking at the same time. Hell, even in some parts of the game, there are pauses that are a bit awkward because they wanted to make sure that one character wasn't talking over the other.
I'm sure some of you are annoyed that I said I didn't like a video game, but That's where we are, isn't it?
Oh, what a lovely way to finish this. He talked about the writing there for a bit that I cut out because it is something I agree with, and it is a very fair judgment of it. But what a fucking way to end this video, where you come up with shit that rarely happens in the game, or if ever even happens in the game, manage to have a painful double standard, and then try make yourself play the victim because you did not enjoy a game, and your critiques of it are either non-points or things that are already there. Can you talk shit about Metro Exodus, or can you even say that you don't like it because of things that are in the game? Most certainly, yes. But you cannot go around saying something that was always there is now an issue, based on your made-up nonsense of getting stuck on twigs as if that happens in the game. Claim that in the other games you could be methodical as if to imply that in this game, which you can tackle most situations any way you want, doesn't let you be methodical, especially when you're so shit at it judging by your gameplay. And talk about the monsters in the Metro series and say that they are your personal biggest annoyance when, if you've played this game, you'll know that the monsters are not a majority of the enemies you fight in this game. Not unless you go out looking for them and avoid a majority of human settlements. But hey, it's Jim Sterling. I don't know what I expected. Thank you guys for watching, thank you guys for rating, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.